Okay, it is 1 o'clock on November 12th, 2024, and I'll call our Governance and Priorities Committee meeting to order. First order on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have anything they would like to add to the agenda or modify the agenda? If not, just looking for a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Deputy Mayor Shippold.
Thank you. I also move the agenda as presented.
Okay, any discussion on that? Call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. We will move on to item 3.1, delegations. So we have the a delegation from Parkland Regional Library, and we have Ron Shepherd and Ron Shepherd as the director and Barb Gilliott as the board chair. And we'll have you come up to the chair up front. And then just make sure you press your buttons, and once you press your buttons, then everyone can hear you. And I will turn it over to whichever. Okay, then I guess Ron's doing the talking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for having us.
I'm going to bring it up.
You can breathe up?
Yep.
So again, thank you very much for having us. It's really nice to be here today, and I'm not actually asking for anything. I'm not asking for a budgetary increase. I'm not asking for money. I'm not doing any of that. This is purely informational. And His Worship, the mayor, who sits on our board, asked us to prepare a presentation to provide a little bit of insight into the structure of public library service in Alberta, because it's quite a bit different from how things are organized a little in other provinces. So, and you'll be flipping the button?
I can, or I can pass
No,
it to you.
that's
What do you
okay.
prefer?
I'll hold it up when I'm ready to go.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll go straight to here. And so we're going to be covering just what public libraries are and what they do, the Alberta Libraries Act, the role of municipal council, the role of the library board, and regional library systems, and the role of the government of Alberta, because they all have an interplay in actually providing the citizens of the province with public library service. So we'll start with your public library. Your public library, it's your service, and it's very much a municipal service, the same as any other service, whether it's law enforcement or garbage removal or whether it's filling potholes. It just so happens that you appoint an autonomous board to operate it. And so the kinds of things that you do when you expect to go to a public library is you want your information and resources. It's supposed to provide a welcoming space, and certainly the library here in Rocky Mountain House is a very nice one. Lifelong skills for resume building or even education, as well as unique programs for arts, culture, science, and technology. And particularly in many smaller communities, public libraries are the last public spaces. There really aren't, sometimes arenas close down, places that don't have swimming pools, but the public library is the one place where all citizens are welcome. You can go there for minimal or no charge. And in many cases, it's the one community space that welcomes absolutely everybody. And then just some of the services that are offered by public libraries. Well, you can get things printed, and you have computer access, because again, some people just don't have those commodities at home anymore. You can get things like 3D printing, exam proctoring, and you can also get, through your public library, connections to resources and services that are not just within your own particular community, but access to resources that are throughout the entire province and even across Canada. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. However, libraries also are starting to offer services that they weren't ever really designed or mandated or funded to do. Little free pantries where people can come in and pick up free food. Menstrual products are sometimes given out for people who are, again, disenfranchised. There are a lot of after-school snack programs in libraries now, too, for children who can't necessarily go home because their parents aren't at home yet, and so they go to the library and they can get a little bit of food after school. Libraries distributed masks during the COVID emergency. And another thing, that's again, not something that you would think a library has to face, but there are quite a few libraries particularly in larger urban centers, and that includes some within Parkland, who are also ending up as places where, and this sounds awful, but where people consume illegal narcotics, or I guess they might be decriminalized now in some jurisdictions, but people go to the library because there are people who are trained in dealing with overdose victims. And so people are trained, and I can't remember the name of the antidote they administer to deal with people.
Naloxone.
What was it called?
Naloxone.
That's it, thank you. And so these are things that libraries in your community might end up by doing that you wouldn't ever anticipate a library having to do. And so, library service framework. Again, the things that they're built around, what a public library is supposed to do is provide that equitable access, accountability to funders and citizens. I know libraries are a public service and they always require funding, but they also know that they are accountable back, because public libraries are funded through provincial operating grants and through municipal levies, if you want to think of it that way. But they do understand that they are not only accountable back to their funders, but to the citizens at large. Because remember, libraries are supposed to provide the services and programs that their community wants, which means that they should be consulting with their community on a regular basis for what those are. And then we'll talk just quickly about the Alberta Libraries Act, simply because sometimes there's some confusion about legislation. Some municipal councils have said at the beginning of this that public library is your service, but it's also not governed by the MGA. It has its own separate legislation, the Alberta Libraries Act and regulation. I know the MGA, the last time I was looking through it, for whatever reason I was, it's about that thick. Libraries Act and regulation, they're quite small, but they're actually co-equal bits of legislation. So one does not trump the other. They coexist side by side. So we'll talk quickly about the role of municipal council, because municipal council also doesn't have a lot of direct authority or control over library boards, but what control it has is actually very, very significant. I mean, I just finished telling you that it's your service, it's a municipal service. And the first thing that you decide is whether or not you actually want to have a library, because you have to pass a bylaw and then establish a board. So you have to pass a bylaw somewhere back in the midst of time. Rocky Mountain House created a library board, passed a bylaw to that effect, then it appointed the board. Then it has to fund the board, because if you don't fund at least to a minimum of $2 per capita, you won't trigger a provincial operating grant. Under the Act, you can provide a building, you don't have to. You also get to determine the degree of financial review done by the library. So what that means is, the library picks somebody to look at their books at year end. Their auditor can be a small A or an actual audit. It's up to you. It's actually, that's up to council, because you can't tell the library board who's doing their books, but you must find them acceptable. Because what if you want a full-blown audit and there's a designation, an accounting designation that you have to have in order to do those? And that's to give councils that kind of financial oversight over the board that they appointed and are funding. You also receive and accept library bylaws, because you might have to call a peace officer to deal with something at a library. Again, councils can't make bylaws for libraries. They can't change them, but they must be passed. After they're passed by the board, they have to be passed by council. You receive reports. And actually, it's the municipality that chooses whether you join a regional system. So you're the member, and you're actually part of an intermunicipal agreement for system service. So your agreement is with the other 63 municipalities that make up Parkland, not with us, not with anybody in Lacombe. And you also choose whether or not to appoint somebody to a board, because in the case of system boards, they change the Act, and so we encourage you to do that, but you're not obligated to do so. Then the role of the library board. It operates within the roles and responsibility. It actually operates as a corporation. So it's founded under the Act, but it can do all of the things that a regular corporation can do. Ideally, they manage and hire the senior library staff. The senior library staff then manages everybody else. There are limits to the way boards can raise funds, so that's why you often have Friends of the Library groups that are formed to be able to assist with that. And as I've already mentioned, they are funded by municipalities and by the province. And otherwise, they have full responsibility and control for the provision of public library service in their communities. And then we'll talk about us just briefly. So, regional library systems, you have to think of it this way, that you go to Edmonton or Calgary, they have a headquarters that does a whole bunch of stuff, and then they have all these branches. We operate the same way. We've got 49 service points, but we don't actually run the libraries. But they still need all the support services, which I'll get into in a minute, that the same as a large library like Edmonton or Calgary does. So we're headquartered in Lacombe, and we provide an integrated library system, which is like a great big inventory control system. So that's how people keep track of what items are checked out and who their patrons are. And we have a whole bunch of other services that we provide to our libraries. We're that library for libraries. So one of the things that we do is we provide the majority of the training for our library staff. Because most libraries don't have people who are actual librarians. Rocky Mountain House is fortunate enough to have a librarian running the library, but most people have, some education past high school, but not library specific. So we provide the expertise and ongoing support for them. We are the only library system in Alberta of the 7 regional systems that actually buys all of the computers and wireless equipment that go in libraries, and we provide all the network support. We manage all of the interlibrary loans. So last year there were about 1.2 million items circulated throughout all of Parkland, and I want to say that about 250,000 of those were interlibrary loans. So that's stuff that's being borrowed not just between libraries within Parkland, but throughout all of Alberta, and we make that happen. We also provide all of the e-content, so the e-books and the audiobooks. We license all of that because libraries can't do that on their own, not easily. And we provide access to nationwide resources, and I've already talked about that when it comes to the things that we can bring in from all around Alberta and also internationally if needs must. We provide an awful lot of board support and on all sorts of different topics, everything from board governance to human resource matters. And we're increasingly working with Friends of the Library groups too, because we find they need support. Because remember, each library in Parkland has its own library board. And then we also do work with marketing and advocacy. We try to provide tools to libraries so that they can do both those jobs more effectively on their own. And here, this is just a map, so you can see we're smack right there. I guess we're technically in the southern part of the province, really, but we call ourselves Central Alberta, and those are the 7 library systems. And those boundaries are established under the libraries regulation, again, government legislation. And then just really quickly about us, we were formed in 1959, and we were the first of the library systems in Alberta, and we've got those 49 libraries, and we've got 64 member municipalities, so that's the most public libraries of a library system and the most member municipalities. And I'm conscious of the time, so we're heading to the role of the provincial government, and this will be the last little section, because the provincial government in Alberta, in some ways, we have a less centralized provincial library than other provinces do. And even in the United States, state libraries tend to be very powerful because they kind of do the same work that the Public Library Services branch does here in Alberta. But again, they have a much bigger role in the United States. So what the PLSB does, they're part of municipal affairs, is they provide annual grants to municipal and system boards. In fact, that's where most of their budget goes. It's about 37 million or thereabouts. They also establish standards for library service. They fund access to the SuperNet. So if a library belongs to Parkland, it has a SuperNet connection, but that SuperNet connection is paid for by the government of Alberta. And it's also very important because we deliver the internet through the SuperNet. Many of our small communities, that's the only high-speed internet that's accessible by anybody. They pay for government courier. which allows us to ship things around the province, again, going back to that interlibrary loan. They also provide per capita funding for Indigenous communities, the on-reserve, on-settlement grants. So we receive a grant every single year, and then from that grant, we try to provide service to the 6 reserves that are within Parkland. So we've got a service at Maskwacis, which looks after the four bands there, and we're doing work right now to help try and establish a public library with Ochise and Sunchild, which is not too far away from you. And they also provide Relay, which is an interlibrary loan software. So if you can't find it in Parkland, patrons go to Relay and they can find it elsewhere in Alberta. The government also licenses and funds some of the some e-content to provide a sort of a foundation so all Albertans have access to it. And then they also fund, it's the National Network for Equitable Learning Services, NNELS, and the Center for Equitable Library Access, CELA. And those are materials that are either physical or downloadable for people who are sight impaired. So they provide those resources for all libraries everywhere in Alberta. And then they provide a me-card service, or rather they pay for it. It's actually Edmonton Public Library that hosts it. But it basically means that if you have your public library card from Parkland, you can go to any public library anywhere in Alberta and they'll set up an account for you, and then you can borrow those materials from their libraries. And then just take them home, drop them off at a Parkland library, and it'll find its way back. So just really quickly, public library highlights. They're funded by municipal and provincial tax dollars, managed by a council, managed by a board actually appointed by, it should be reversed here, managed by a board appointed by council, and under the Libraries Act and regulations, that's the governing legislation, and the whole idea is to provide equitable public library service. And then lastly, library systems. Well, we provide an awful lot of efficiency, and we provide services without which a lot of libraries would not have access to resources that you'd find comparable in a big urban center. And that's the whole point of reducing the urban and rural divide. And we also provide that expertise and support to libraries, and like I said, access to all sorts of different types of resources, including the e-content, which couldn't be obtained by a local library. So do you have any questions?
Does council have any questions? Okay, I do have one topic that I could maybe get you to elaborate on, is just the benefits of belonging to a regional system, just from a financial point of view, if you could maybe touch on that for a minute.
Well, actually, if you go, I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it already, go to the Parkland Regional Library website, because we have a return on investment. Because you can download that and you can see exactly based on 2023 numbers, since those are the numbers we have to work with, the value that you get from belonging to a regional system. Because again, in the case of say purchasing, we have bulk discounts that are about 41%, or give about a 41% benefit when you buy through us, because we negotiate deals with our vendors for materials. So if you want to buy books, that's adding an awful lot of extra buying power to what libraries spend. We also distribute the Rural Library Service Grant. That's a grant that comes to us at Parkland from the government, for instance, for Clearwater County. And we ask the county, so Clearwater County, how do you want this money divided up? And then we give it to the libraries in the area. So Caroline gets some, Rocky gets an awful lot. Nordic gets a little tiny bit, and we also are the ones who do all those van deliveries. So we manage all of the interlibrary loaning. If Rocky didn't belong to Parkland, I don't know how, unless they mailed everything, they would be able to move interlibrary loan materials to and from other libraries. We do all of the cataloging. Again, everybody purchases through us. We also have a materials allotment. So when Parkland asks for money every year, we set aside $1.13 per capita, and that money goes onto an account, and then the library gets to spend against it. So you're giving us money, but the materials are actually purchased and reside within each of your libraries, each of your community libraries. And again, we provide all of the computer hardware and software, and that's actually one of our biggest budget lines, which is just the computer software, because nobody has to license their own operating systems or give any kind of support. We do all of that. So you have to think of it as we're running in the background doing all of these and many other different types of things, which would have to be absorbed and managed somehow by the local library, and it's just really not possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. Any other questions from council? I know you had mentioned earlier that it looks like your budget has been approved. You had your 2/3 membership approval.
Yeah, because the way our agreement is set up, again, you're part of an intermunicipal agreement, so the agreement is with the other municipalities that make up Parkland. And one of the provisions is that we require, after the board passes the budget, that 2/3 of the municipalities representing 2/3 of the population approve the budget for the budget to be passed. And it actually went really quick this year. But yes, it passed. But that's, part of that was because of the whole issue involving which population numbers we're using to invoice on, because I know this was an issue for municipalities too, about is it Treasury Board population estimates or is it municipal affairs population lists? So that's resolved.
Okay, thank
Did
you.
yours go up or down? You thought-
Ours went up. Our requisition went up.
Sorry.
18 of them went down.
Yeah, ours went down.
Okay, any further? Deputy Mayor Sheppel.
Acting Mayor, thank you. Question about the footprint. Is there anything, if you take a town our size, at 7,000 people, is there a footprint size for a library for a town our size, or is whatever happens, happens? Like, and my thinking comes when you have, when we provide funding to the libraries, if we have a larger footprint than is the normal, and there's more work and you guys are delivering more products, more services in that larger footprint, does that come into the equation at all? So firstly, it's two questions. Number one, what's the normal size footprint for a town our size? Is that information available? And secondly, in your calculation, when you're calculating fees for service, if it's a larger size footprint, does that come into account at all in the billing?
Oh, no, the bill, so I'll answer.
Totally by per capita, or?
It's entirely per capita, because the idea is that if it's based on, there's an assumption, probably goes back way beyond me, way further than me, but the idea is that you have citizens, how much does it cost to provide system-level service to each person within our jurisdiction? So we've got a little over 250,000 people altogether. So that's what the budget's built around. And we look at it as, it doesn't matter whether you're in a small place or a big place, it shouldn't cost more or less from our perspective to provide that service. Now, you also asked about your footprint. Yes, there are standards. There are standards that are provided by the Public Library Services branch. I mentioned in my presentation that they do actually create standards, and they have a great big standards document where they will say that if you're in a community this size, this is approximately how much space you should have, what your collection size should be, how many computers you should have, and I think they even make recommendations for staff. But be clear that those are only recommendations, because they don't enforce any of that. You can have it bigger or smaller. It depends entirely on what the community can afford to provide.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, well, thank you, Barb. Thank you, Ron, for coming in today and explaining how the Parkland Regional Library System works. And I hope you have a safe drive back. It'll be a nice day for it. So we do have a closed session delegations at 1:30, and it is 1:24, so I will take a quick few-minute recess, and then we'll reset and get ready for our closed session.
We're live again.
Okay, so we are back in open session, and we are going to go into closed session for our delegation. So I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Auld.
I'll make the motion, we go into closed session.
Okay, we have that motion. Discussion. All those in favor? And that is carried. We are now in closed session. Okay, so we're back to our regular meeting. So on to item 4.1, adoption of the previous minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes from our October 8th meeting? And is there any errors or omissions that anyone sees? If not, I am looking for a motion to accept those minutes. Deputy Mayor Shippold.
Thank you. Also move the minutes to be accepted as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Any discussion? Call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to delegation business, item 5.1, the Parkland Regional Library System presentation. Any discussion on this, or are we just looking for a motion to accept as information? Councillor Musker?
Yes, thank you. I'll move that we accept the Parkland Regional Library System presentation for information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any discussion on that? I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to item 5.2, the delegation from Alberta Transportation. Do we have any discussion on this? If not, looking for a motion to accept it for information. Councillor Caprero.
Thank you. I will make the motion to accept for information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Discussion on that motion. Call it to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Item 5.3, the encampments. Councillor Hutchinson has a motion.
Thank you. Be it resolved that council direct administration to review the community standards bylaw.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do we have any discussion on that motion? I will call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is also carried. So we'll move on to item 6.1, the town flag flying protocol. And Mr. Kraus, are you taking this one? Okay.
Yep, thank you, Acting Mayor. So Council has requested administration to bring forward proposed amendments to the flag flying policy. So administration has done that for Council. Hopefully we caught Council's intent. So the changes are in 3.A, where it's more mandatory and prescriptive than shall, how we fly the flags. And the order of precedent has been amended. So what has been amended is taking out flags of organizations. So that's no longer in the order of precedence. And then in 3B, there's now a statement that the town flag will be flown at all properties owned by the town. And it won't be removed unless there's no room, unless there's a flag of higher precedence that needs to be flown. So then in E, we struck out the RCMP flags because that's federal property, so we really don't have any jurisdiction of how they fly their flags. So that has just been crossed out for clarity. And then in E3, we just added police officer and community peace officer, where previously the statement was just for firefighters. So it's more encompassing of the enforcement branch. And I will leave that up now to Council's discussion to see if admin captured your intent.
Okay, so what is Council's discussion on this? Everyone's had a chance to read this. Councillor Musker, and then I think I see Deputy Mayor Shippold will be next.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. These changes are exactly what I had in mind when I put forward the original motion to review this policy. We've made some minor but meaningful changes, and we've been able to, retain the lion's share, the bulk of the policy without having to reinvent the wheel here. I'd like to just reread the policy statement, which I'm really happy is in there. All flags are important symbols of honor and pride and must be treated in a respectful and consistent manner. And I think that's what was lacking prior to these changes, with the practice of lowering the town's flag to make room for the flags of organizations or causes. We were not treating the town's flag in a respectful and consistent manner. So that's been taken care of, and that's very clear. We also removed the practice of asking council to make values-based judgments regarding the flying of flags. So I think it's a really good upgrade. and I would be happy to make the motion. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Shipple first.
Well, thank you, Acting Mayor. So, having read this, I guess I have a concern with it. And my concern is we've really tied our flag policy to saying what we got is what we got. And our opening statement says, hey, flags are important to everybody, and they are important to organizations as well. And to say that we will not fly another organization's flag, I think is short-sighted on our part as a council. I think all these groups are important to us as a community. And so by tying that as tight as we've tied it, I think we went a bit too far. I think we went overboard. I think there needs to be some discretion in this policy to allow other organizations' flags to be flown at council's discretion.
Councillor Muska.
Thank you. I agree. The flags of organizations should be allowed to be flown, but not on municipal property. I think we stick with what we have here. It just kind of keeps us out of making those values-based decisions. Municipal property should be flying government flags and shouldn't be making, from my perspective, decisions or choices on what to fly organizationally or for causes. Keep it simple.
Deputy Mayor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I guess I hear you. We have 6 flags flying on this property right now that represent different governments. I think that organizations are somewhat important to our community. Without them, I'm not sure that we'd survive. I think it's, again, short-sighted on our part not to have that. I would suggest that we send this bylaw back to administration to look at how we could incorporate that in to the bylaw. So I guess what I'm doing is speaking against the approval of this bylaw as it sits today. Sorry, policy.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I like that this policy covers the flags that are currently flying with the town. We had discussed about possibility of a standalone flagpole someplace else, but I think as it's written and the changes that are made, I would agree with Councillor Musker that we've kind of put our town flag kind of second rate to other organizations. So I like how it's set up, and I would be voting in favor of the policy as it sits.
Do we have more discussion from council? So I do like this policy as presented, because it does make very clear which flags fall in which order and which precedence. Should we be looking at something completely different? I don't know. I mean, that's another question. But it is. I do like this policy the way it's laid out. We've had many discussions over flags over the last few years, and this will make it very clear what our flag flying policy is and flag flying protocol. More discussion? Any motions prepared to be made? Councillor Musker.
Yeah, thank you. I'll make the motion. Be it resolved that council rise and report the draft town flag flying protocol policy to the November 19th, 2024 regular council meeting.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Are we clear on that motion? Any more discussion on that motion? Then I will call that to a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to item 7.1, the census cost report. Ms. Breeze, are you taking that one?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So the census, I believe, was brought up at a council meeting and at service level again. So council instructed administration to bring a cost report back to council regarding holding a municipal census. So obviously, there is potential benefits to conducting a municipal census. We do have an election next year, so it is not recommended to hold it during a municipal election year. In 2026, there'll be a municipal census as well. And if you hold, or pardon me, federal census. So if we have a census the same year, they will not count our numbers. They'll take the federal census numbers. So there's obviously an impact to the organization if we do hold a municipal census, because it is a lot of work. So most of these numbers are based on Sylvan. I've talked to Sylvan Lake. They held a municipal census as well. So there's basic costs involved. There's probably some costs that aren't in this report that are that I'm not fully aware of, because I just looked at the big costs, what it would cost to get enumerators, what the software would cost to run, which is based out of Airdrie. So that is a quote that came right from Airdrie for the 8325. Some basic numbers for training, some advertising numbers, and basically just what is involved. And I will leave it up to council for their decision.
Okay, thank you for the report. Do we have discussion from council? Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I just feel with if there wasn't a 2027 federal census happening, then maybe consideration, but to spend between $25,000 and $27,000 on a municipal census at this time, to me is not worth the money that we would be spending.
Okay, Councillor Auld.
I agree with Councillor Hutchinson. I do not see how the benefit would outweigh the cost for this. I'd make the motion and thank you, admin, for providing us this information, because I didn't realize it was going to be that expensive. But I'd make the motion that be it resolved that Governance Priorities Committee accept the census report as information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, I will call that to a vote then. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Moving on to item 7.2, the request for decision on the recreational facility access policy. And I see we have Lisa coming up to present that for us.
Hello, thank you. My name is Lisa Cheer. I'm here on behalf of Wes Ament, Director of Recreation and Community Services. The policy before you, Recreation Facility Access Policy, essentially provides people with low income an opportunity to access the facilities within town at a 50% discount. I think you've seen the policy once before, so I won't go through all the details, but essentially they have a number of drop-ins, programs and memberships that they can purchase for a 50% discount, youth, adult, and senior. And the income would be similar, or would be what FCSS is already providing some of the community for the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program. So those same thresholds for income would apply to this as well. So streamlining that for FCSS to be able to administer, and then they would provide a punch card at the rec center for those, and we would apply the discount at the till. So.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Does council have any questions for administration on this? Councillor Hutchinson.
So it was brought up, I don't know, 1 or 2 meetings ago by Councillor Chappelle about the fee rate for over 75, or whichever it was. Anyways, that would be encompassed in this. Would it's eligible for a senior that would be, is it under the 35,000 or, like, the numbers that are given by the Government of Canada? Like, I know a lot of, like with the Seniors Lodge, you deal with line
150, I believe, of their
150.
tax.
Yeah. Is that where these numbers are coming from?
Yeah, so it is the Canada Revenue Agency that is providing these numbers. And so it is based on family size. So for one person, a total family income of 35,000. And then as you move up in number of people, so if it's a 4-person household, 50,000. And then it goes up from there, more than 5 people. So family size includes an individual or a couple or their dependents. So that's the current chart that FCSS is using when they're evaluating whether they're doing those individuals' taxes for free.
So I
So-
should be familiar with the number, but I'm not, as to what the threshold is for the low-income seniors.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that data in front of me.
Just wanting to make sure that that would be able to take those seniors into consideration.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something to look into and maybe modify the policy so that it reflects a senior, a low-income senior on a pension.
Sure. The other part of this is children supported by the Child and Youth Support Program funding is also on here as well, because they would fall typically below those thresholds. But as far as your question as the plus 75, right, they get it free, all the rec services for 75 plus. This would speak to having our adult rate, our youth and senior rate are lower, and then they would get a 50% discount off that lower rate. So they would see a benefit there as well.
Councillor Hutchinson.
I can't remember what your inquiry was about, Councillor Chappelle. It was dropping that 75 down to 65, is that correct?
Correct. I guess I'd revert this to Mr. Kraus because I made a notice of motion on this, and so it's going to be coming back up through that notice of motion, so I'm just not sure how it ties into this.
Yeah, so that is a notice of motion that comes back on next week's council meeting. And that notice of motion is talking about no fee for anyone age 65 and up, I believe. So it's a different program than this. So under this program, if a senior income is below that threshold, they would get the 50%. So this is totally income-based, where the notice of motion is age-based.
And our seniors now at the recreation facilities are 60, starting at 60.
Councillor Hutchinson.
I answered my own question. I did quickly looked it up, and the seniors is 29,855. So they would be
They would
eligible.
definitely fall within there. The
Yeah.
35,000 is where.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so back to the policy that we're discussing here. Do we have any more questions of administration on this particular policy? Okay, then we are looking for a motion or accept as information. Councillor Hutchinson.
I thought Councillor Musker was going for it. I like this idea. I hope it doesn't put an extra burden on our FCSS staff. I think that they would have a lot of these people already in their system. But I like the idea, so I'll make the motion to that be it resolved that council rise and report the recreation facility access policy 014/2024 as presented to the council meeting on December 3rd, 2024.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Seeing no discussion, I'm going to call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. So we will move on to item 7.3, the wayfinding project. And I believe Mr. Schwader and Ms. Button are doing this one together.
No. Good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Good afternoon, Acting Mayor, Council. Just before I start, I just want to recognize Jeff Hartling, the EDO, and Tiffany Robinson for helping in this project. They did a lot of work with the maps and that type of stuff, so just want to recognize them.
Thank you. I had that in my
Oh,
notes,
sorry.
too. No, I'm great. I want to recognize our EDO and our comms officer.
So in 2023 and 2026 strategic plan the council had, wayfinding sign was one of the projects. So in the 2024 budget, there was $250,000 budgeted in capital. $50,000 was for the legwork in regards to hiring a consultant, and then that person, that company, creating a wayfinding sign design as well as locations within our community. The final report that's being presented here for council's information, along with a phased implementation plan for council's consideration. In regards to strategic plan alignment, Rocky is recognized as a destination. The town is positioned for opportunities, safe and secure life for all, and building a strong community through social activities and events. Financially, we budgeted $50,000 for a consultant. We spent $42,000 this year for the final of this report. There's currently $200,000 allocated in the draft 2025 capital budget. Council will need to decide whether to proceed with the project in 2025 and whether to further allocate funds in 2026 and 2027 to build out the program. For the organization, it was a lot of work that we went through to get this to where the stage that it's at. There's a lot of work with the consultant in regards to giving him direction. Implementation of the wayfinding program outlined under the comments section will require construction of the signs through an RFP process, finalizing content of each sign, and overseeing the installation. These last two could be completed by the town staff or else with the assistance of a consultant. I'll get Ms. Button to help me with the comments and as far as the sign design as well as the implementation that we've thought about rolling out over the next 3 years.
Thanks. So right off the top, you can see those wayfinding program principles. You see words like vibrant, connectivity, diversity, inclusivity, and placemaking. And these are all concepts that council has been really familiar with the last few years, certainly with the most recent strategic plan, but also in discussions you've had with residents around the landmark concept and civic building design and engagement that we've done on that. So we see that the wayfinding program principles really align with council strategic plan, particularly, with regards to growing that tourism industry, as well as finding that true identity for our community. As Mr. Schrader said, it was a big project, a lot of work. So we had some key objectives that we put to the consultants and tackled together as a team. You can see what those are in front of you, the integrating the existing town guidelines and plans, etc. I won't read the slide to you. But the point I want to make is that we know it's a big price tag, and council sees that before you as well. So we wanted to make sure that what came out the other end wasn't reinventing the wheel, wasn't a complete overhaul, something that can be done in phases and integrated with our existing town infrastructure. So we don't have a town that looks really piecemeal, that we can roll it out in phases without seeing a big disconnect throughout. And our final report with the staged priority-driven implementation strategy actually dovetails, and it's not by accident, with your strategic plan, and we'll talk about those 3 phases as we go. I want to talk a little bit about the sign design and development. We went through, and there's other options that the consultants presented, and this got bounced around quite a bit. And we did draw a lot on that community input from the previous two related engagements council did, with regards to what do we want the signs to look like. So kept coming back to that river confluence and the natural timbers. These are two things that will not change about our community. And of course, that blue and white color palette. The sign design themselves, the report includes the scale drawings that can be manufactured. They do have some manufacturing costs from the consultant. There's obviously a bit of cost saving if we do more at one time. And we've also gone back to them to say, can we find a little bit more cost saving? Is there a different material or whatnot that can be used to create them? We have had discussions with some local sign manufacturers, is that the word? Yeah, as well, to see what we can do with the design and the materials to have them done, if not all, then certainly in part locally. Implementation strategies. So this is where we've really split it up into 3 years. Year 1, we're focusing on that central vehicular access. I did print the larger map for you just so you have it in front of you to break out. This ties into your strat plan with your improved access to downtown and Main Street, and that's where we're putting the focus in year 1. Is you can see that's the central corridor. Year 2, we're moving out to peripheral vehicular signs and the central pedestrian signage. And then in that 3rd year, look to the peripheral pedestrian and event signage. And that, as I said off the top, allows that phased approach. No one of these will stick out like a sore thumb until they're all done. They will naturally follow in that order. As a result of this fairly significant project, we have identified what I have been calling bonus content, which also ties in with your strategic plan, which is having projects ready on the shelf as funding opportunities become available. So there's really a 4th tier to this this wayfinding program, which was our trail wayfinding program. And that's a significant price tag in and of itself. It's, I believe, includes 35 signs for 35 sign locations. And this is ready to go. If an active transportation community wellness grant type comes out tomorrow, the town could conceivably apply for it and say, we want to put these trail markers on our signs. They give you the distance, they give you the districts, the direction, et cetera, et cetera. It could easily be a fourth year in this project. But it was really, was obvious to us that it was a simple thing to package on its own as, hey, there's one of those shovel-ready projects on the shelf ready to go if grant funding becomes available. Or if there's significant cost savings with the program when the signs are manufactured, we can roll that up into the program as well and complete it sooner. So that more or less finishes the things I had highlighted. One thing I know we missed was in the financial piece. We talked about it, and my error, I didn't write it down, was that council had earmarked funds for the development of a landmark. Council's had significant discussion and consultation with the community about that. Perhaps the significant capital infrastructure is not going forward, but those funds are there and could be diverted to this project, which supports a lot of your strategic plan goals. So that is for your consideration as well.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Let's open this up for discussion. Deputy Mayor Schiffel.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So I read through this all, and it's a fairly intense program. I wonder if it's not too intense. I guess what I'd be saying is there's a lot of money involved in it, and is it more than what we really need? I'm not saying we don't need it at all, but I just look at it's almost, it's intense. I don't know what other word to use there. In terms of the, I guess I need to be sold on the intensity of it, meaning the amount of money spent equals end user happiness. What are we going to accomplish? I'm just not convinced myself. So, to that, and your comments on the landmark, I think the landmark thing, I mean, it's quite obvious from the feedback we got, should be quashed. So, that's another opinion and another subject. But anyway, having said that, I just look at this and I question if it's not overkill.
Yeah, it's definitely a large price tag attached to it for sure. You know, going back to that landmark discussion, I would like to see that taken out of the 2025 budget. I think we've discussed that, and we've had enough discussion on that I would like to see that taken out of the 2025 budget as a separate discussion from the Wayfair signing. Councillor Hutchinson.
I see this completely differently. I was absolutely excited reviewing all of it, and I can't remember what the document was, something about community building. It was about a year or so ago, and I remember talking to both, anyways, and the studies that were done on that in regards to pulling a community together. And this ties into our strategic plan with tourism, and just a welcoming community. I love it. I think it's a piece that's missing when we talked about a landmark. Our signage alone could be our landmark. That could be what we're known for, like a continuing. You go to Banff for Jasper, and they've got all the same type of signage, and it just gives you, it's just a community feel. I think this is great. I absolutely love the idea. The only thing that I would maybe consider changing would be the event signs, which I think is a great idea, rather than having every group put up their own sign stuck on the highway, having that consistent look and something that's easily changeable, possibly putting that into a sooner implementation plan rather than later. But I love it. I think it's a great document.
Councillor Musker.
Yes, thank you. I agree. It is, they look fantastic. But I was a little taken aback at the price. And so, mostly because I just didn't have anything to compare it to. Is that a lot of money? Well, it's a lot of money, of course, but are we getting bang for the buck? And then I realized it's about 3 months worth of our police contract. And yeah, it's still a lot of money, but putting it into perspective helped me kind of get my head around the number part of it. Just wanted to make that comment.
Councillor Auld.
I think going back to our service level review, we discussed this at length, trying to come up with ideas to bring our community together, have a central vision, and I think this does that. I think it totally ties in with our strategic plan, long-term plans, and I think administration's done a really good job at bringing this together for us with all this information. It is expensive, but I think in the long run it's worth it. I think the long-term gain is definitely worth it.
Do we have more discussion? If not, looking for a motion. Councillor Auld.
Yeah, there's no more discussion. I'll just make the motion that council accept the wayfinding sign project for information and discuss at the 2025 operations and capital budget meeting in November.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Thank you for that. Any discussion on that motion? Then I will call that to a vote. All those in favor of that motion? And that is carried. So one other thing I would like to discuss is I know we had the landmark, we had budget in the 2025 budget for the landmark item. I would like to remove that from the 2025 budget. I see that we're not, and I don't want to speak for council, but I don't think this is something that's on the map right now. So I would like to see that removed from the 2025 budget. Do we have any Councillor Hutchinson, sorry.
Thank you. Is that not something that would be in our budget discussions coming up?
So just for clarification, Acting Mayor, so the landmark project is in your 2024 budget. Council's already approved that budget. I mean, administration hasn't moved on any landmark project just because we went through a public engagement. So we won't be definitely spending any money in 2024 on it because we have no direction from council. I guess it's just more direction for administration to postpone the landmark project in 2024, and then it'd be a budget discussion whether it carries forward into 2025.
Okay, that's my correction for that then. That's what I would like to see happen. You know, it didn't happen in 2024, and is that something we're to carry through to 2025? I think we should have that discussion. And I don't know if we have that discussion today or we have it during budget, but I think it's a discussion we have to have. Councillor Musker.
Thank you. What would Mr. Kraus recommend, having a discussion today or just during budget deliberations to clean that up? It's not on the agenda, right?
Yeah, so it could be just a simple motion that administration not proceed with the landmark project in 2024 and have discussions at the 2025 budget. Then it's clear in the book that administration is not proceeding with anything, right? And then that is will come back to council for a formal decision.
Okay, you know what, I will go ahead and make that motion then, I'll make a motion that we do not proceed forward in the 2024 budget with the landmark project, and that we bring it forward to discussion in the 2025 to not bring it forward to 2025 budget. Is that clear as mud? Councillor Hutchinson?
No. To have the discussion of where to reallocate or what to do with that money in 2025, or during our 2025 budget discussions.
Yes. Okay, is everyone clear on that motion?
Yeah, please read it.
So the motion would be to not, to remove the landmark capital from our 2024 budget. And, sorry, Mr. Kraus? Oh, okay. I saw your finger going. So to remove it from the 2024 project list for a budget, and to include it as topic of discussion in the 2025 budget as to what to do with that, with those funds. Councillor Musker.
Thank you. If we just don't do anything, doesn't it just drop off?
Mr. Kraus.
Well, council will have to address it in the 2025 budget discussion for sure, because council's already approved this budget in 2024, so it's still an approved project by council. So council will eventually have to cancel this project in some form. So we could do that in the 2025 budget discussions where council, council's a project, reallocates the funds and so forth, so. But right now, the motion is that it instructs administration not to proceed with the landmark project in 2024, pending discussions in the 2025 budget.
I'm just curious about procedure, like this discussion wasn't on the agenda, and we've got a motion on the table now regarding it. I don't know how to proceed. Can we put this as a notice of motion to the next meeting to deal with this?
Mr. Kraus, what would be,
Please.
Yeah,
what would be the best way?
I understand what you're saying, because it is not a specific agenda item, right? But I think the topic or the item came up in the wayfinding discussions, in possibility of reallocation of funds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table. Any more discussion on that motion? And I will call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So moving on to item 7.4, the utility rate. Ms. Quinlan, I do not see here. Are you taking
No,
this, Mr. Kraus?
thank you, Akhimir, and I apologize, Ms. Quinlan is away today, who would probably provide greater in-depth answers to the calculations of the utility rates. So at the service level, administration talked to council about the upcoming increases in the utility rates due to the wastewater treatment facility coming online. At that time, we showed what we projected for 2025 and 2026. Council asked for a 5-year projection, and that's what we're presenting to council today. So there is a 5-year rate forecast for council on one of the attachments there, which shows 9.4 in 2025, 5.95 in 2026, 5.6 in 2027, then 2.9 and 3 in the following years, which gets us the plant to be running for a couple of years and down to just like an inflationary number. And so Ms. Quinlan also provided council with a comparison to other municipalities of how that would bring us in line with similar municipalities. So you see with the proposed increase, taking into account that EPR is also coming into play in 2025, the average would be 142. If you compare it to Sylvan, theirs would be 147, Lacomb's 171, Innisfail 148, Panoka 130, Black Falls 146. So even with these increases with the new plant coming along, we are below or comparable to the other municipalities that we're comparing to.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Let's have some discussion on that. What are council's thoughts on that, Councillor Hutchinson?
Thank you. I just want to thank Betty for putting this together. You know, we struggle all the time with comments and questions about our utility rates, and I find it very interesting the way when you look at the comparison chart of how other municipalities charge, and you know, they may be small on the base charge up one, and then but their cubic or their metered number is much higher. I would encourage anybody or few viewers that are watching this to refer back to this chart to see where we're actually at with our utility rates. I'm in favor of this report that Betty's done up, and I would be willing to make the motion if there's no other discussion.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Then if you're prepared to make a motion, go ahead.
Thank you. Be resolved that council approve the 2025 utility rates to be included in the 2025 budget presentation.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Everyone clear on that motion? Any discussion on that motion? Then I will call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. So moving on to correspondence for information, 9.1. Actually 9.1 and 2. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to discuss on those two? If not, just looking for a motion to accept those as information. Councillor Capero.
Thank you. I'll make the motion to accept 9.1 and 9.2 for information.
Thank you. I will call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to the committee reports, 10.1, the acting mayor's activity report. Does anyone have any questions for me on my report? It was a very, very, very busy month. If there's no questions, just looking for a motion to accept that as information. Councillor Musker.
Yes, I'll make the motion that we accept agenda item 10.1, the mayor's activity and committee report for information.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to item 10.2, the council activity reports. Councillor Auld, do you have anything you'd like to highlight in your report?
No thanks, Acting Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Caprero, anything you'd like to highlight?
Not at this time, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, do you have anything you'd like to highlight?
My light was already on. Yeah, it was busy this month. I attended the RPAP event, which was a great, just an informal meeting and some really good conversation with that group of people. The Tourism Forum I attended, really good turnout. It was just really great to see the time that was taken by each of the tourism operators or businesses that took the time when they introduced themselves as to what they do, what services they have, and to see that connections happening between those people. And then there was a break, and then this one is talking to that one. Well, I didn't know you had this, and well, you've got this service, and you've got that service, and it was a really, really good networking event for all of them. And of course, our community events committee, we have been actively planning our Christmas light up event, which is November 23rd from 4:30 to 6:30. We have Santa coming, and I believe a special appearance will happen by the Grinch. We'll be serving hot chocolate and cookies, hopefully to have some music, hopefully to have people giving the music and not just music playing, but we're working on that. So we're quite excited for that event to come up. And that's it. Yes, 4:30 to 6:30. On the 23rd at the Helen Hunley Memorial Park gazebo.
Okay, any questions for Councillor Hutchinson on her report? Then I'll move on to Councillor Schipholt, or Deputy Mayor Schipholt. Any question, anything you'd like to highlight on your report? Any questions on his report? Okay, then I will make a motion to accept. Oh, sorry. Councillor Musker. My apologies. Councillor Musker. I skipped you.
Yes, I have nothing to add to my report. Thank you. I have nothing to add to
Okay.
my report.
Thank you. That was my mistake. So then I will make a motion to accept item 10.2 as information. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to 11.1, the department reports. Mr. Kraus.
No, thank you, Acting Mayor. If council has any questions on the department, I'm happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions on the reports? Councillor Auld.
It's not necessarily on the report, but engineering and operations. There's been a lot of discussion on social media regarding the culvert that was installed. And just for the public record, I'd like your expert opinion on if it was done correctly or not. Right, maybe that goes to Mr. Kraus, but.
Sure, I can answer that. So what that line is that goes through the culvert is a sanitary main line, so a sewer line. That is a project that was done by Alberta Transportation. The culvert is for Trappers Creek to flow through. So it went through Alberta Transportation's engineering and design, which was approved by Alberta Transportation, the designing engineer, for that situation. So we can't raise or lower that line because it's a gravity-fed sewer line. So their solution was to have a large culvert that would take more than the flow of Trappers Creek that wouldn't reach the height of that line. and proceed like that.
Thank you.
And I'll look to Mr. Shanks if I missed any of the,
That line has been like that since time began.
so,
It's been through the culvert.
Ever since, Old Town has been there. It's been through the culvert the whole time.
Okay.
oh, just another public matter, I guess, that's been raising concerns. Our maintenance manager was in Edmonton on last Friday to meet with the elevator company to get the elevator fixed at the rec center. So hopefully that meeting and his displeasure of the service we're receiving speeds that up. But they are waiting for a part. I mean, we also looked at the alternative of hiring another company, but they would have to get that part from the same company because that's who manufactures the elevator. So, but we are working hard to push that elevator company to get it up and running again.
Okay. Thank you for that update, Mr. Kraus. Does anyone have any more questions for Mr. Kraus on the department reports? Okay. Deputy Mayor Sheffield.
Oh, thank you. Just questions, I'm not sure if they should bring up in inquiries or not. The road down on 11A, there's an apartment building there, and there's a cutout. They put in a new curb there about a month and a half ago, and there's pylons sitting there. So there's two driveways into the apartment just coming up the hill, and it's one of those driveways that has not been finished, and I'm not sure if that would be a town matter or an AT matter on the replacement of that curb. And the pylons that are out there keep getting run over. And so I'm just not sure who or what looks after that.
That project was one of ours. Contractor dealt with it, and it's his cones that are left out there. The reason they left the cones there is there's still a depression in the asphalt that wasn't paved yet.
Will that be paved this year yet?
Probably not, seeing how Border Paving closed it down for the season. Usually, right after Remembrance Day, they shut down, and we confirmed that this morning, so we'll have to get it filled with some kind of material, just not sure what.
Yeah, I guess my concern would be a safety issue in terms of going in and out of there. Speaking of safety, the lights have been interfered with coming in on Highway 11 into Rocky Mountains with the new bridge construction. So there's one street light working out of a gamut of street lights there. Would that be an AT program? And is it possible, if it is, to get a hold of them and just see when the street lights would be coming back on? It's like an optical illusion when you're coming from the east coming into town. There's lights on one side of the bridge but not on the other, and it's difficult to see.
We will get a hold of Fortis and have them look into it.
Okay.
That's usually what happens with those.
Sounds good. My last question, if I can. So this spring, we were made aware, and today I was hoping that Alberta Transportation would be on our call, and they weren't. And that's, we got a letter saying that they were going to be revamping some of the intersections in town during the summer and making some of the streetlights so that they'd be coordinated, or at least my understanding was to have coordinated streetlights coming through Rocky. Not streetlights, traffic lights. Nothing has happened there. Are we made aware where that program is at or project is at with those lights and the upgrades they're going to do on the intersections?
They're looking at next year to do the upgrades. The fella that spoke today had talked about that, about some of the, what was the phase?
Yeah, so initially we met, they switched engineering companies, Alberta Transportation, to WSP for the upgrades and the operational plan, and that was what was presented to council. In our meeting with WSP, that when they went through it, they were hoping to have some of that tendered out this fall, including the lights. We haven't seen them go out to tender yet, I mean, because it's an Alberta Transportation project, so we can follow up, but I know the improvements that they're talking about, they're too late now, I mean, because it's concrete work and stuff like that. but we can follow up with them if they're going to sync the lights this year.
Thank you.
Our last conversation with AT actually for the traffic lights, they are synced properly. They're synced for the highway, not for the residents. They want to keep traffic flowing through town. People have to stop at the lights. That's a given. If they are synced properly though. I just don't like it.
Well,
Especially the
I
big
just
trucks.
they may be synced right, but the turning signals, when there's no vehicles in the turning lanes and the turning signals come on at the intersections for turning traffic,
Yeah, and that's part of the operational upgrade that they talked about, is having the camera on top. If it doesn't recognize anything, then the light changes. But I would suspect that's 2025 now. But we can follow up with Alberta Transportation. It's, it's their project.
Okay, any other questions on the administration reports? If not, then I'm just looking for a motion to accept the department reports as information. Councillor Auld.
I'll make the motion that we accept the department reports as information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. 12.1, the action list. Mr. Kraus,
Yeah,
you've
thank
got
you.
most everything crossed off almost.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. So the first one that's open is the town flag policy, which was dealt with today. And then the last one was the energy efficient grant report. So that has changed a bit, working with council. We were waiting for the facility life assessment report to come in and then look at energy improvements. But now that's been shifted to putting in an EOI for an expression of interest for an energy manager to look at the energy efficiency in our buildings. And as discussed with council, we're looking at another building maintenance position in 2025 budget with our current maintenance manager who's certified in energy efficiency reporting to take on to that role partially.
Any questions on the action list? If none, I'm just looking for a motion to accept that as information. Deputy Mayor Sheppel.
Also make that motion that we accept the action list as information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to notice of motion. Does anyone have any notices of motion? Councillor Musker?
Yes, thank you. I have a notice of motion. The council direct administration to investigate whether Rocky Mountain House and area could be marketed as a data center location and bring a report back to council in the new year or at your earliest convenience.
Okay, thank you for that notice of motion. So that will come forth on the next Tuesday's meeting, then, Mr. Kraus?
So this is a notice of motion in the GPC meeting, so it goes to the
Oh,
next
can-
GPC meeting, which is in
Okay.
January. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other notices of motion? Okay, then we'll move on to, we have no more closed sessions, so I will adjourn the meeting at 3:30. Thank you, everyone.